I found something in our bedroom that made 29 years of marriage feel like a complete lie. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Paul, and I've been working as a journalist for the Richmond Times-Dispatch for the past 15 years. It's decent work, covering local stories, community events, the occasional political scandal. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me engaged with the city I love. My wife Laura works at Henderson's Hardware on Broad Street. She's been there for over a decade, helping customers find the right tools, paint colors, garden supplies. She has this way of remembering everyone's projects, asking about their renovations months later. People love her for it. We got married in the summer of 1995, right after I finished my journalism degree. Laura was working retail, even then, at a clothing store downtown. We met at a community barbecue, and I was drawn to her laugh. It was genuine, unguarded. We built a life together in Richmond, bought a modest 2-story house in the West End, and raised 2 kids. Our son Jonathan is 27 now, working in IT for a healthcare company. Last year, he told us he'd met someone special, a woman named Vivian who worked in marketing. They dated for about 8 months before Jonathan proposed, and we were thrilled. Laura cried happy tears when he called to tell us. We'd always hoped our kids would find the kind of partnership we thought we had. The wedding was planned for July, right in the thick of Virginia's summer heat. Jonathan and Vivian decided on an outdoor ceremony at a vineyard about 30 minutes outside Richmond, with the reception in their climate-controlled event barn. Laura threw herself into wedding planning with an intensity one hadn't seen in years. She spent evenings on the phone with Vivian, weekends shopping for decorations, afternoons researching caterers and florists. I noticed she seemed more energized than usual, but I attributed it to the excitement of our son getting married. She'd always been a planner, someone who loved organizing events and bringing people together. This was her moment to shine. About 3 months before the wedding, we met Vivian's parents for the first time at a dinner Jonathan organized. Her mother Elizabeth was a retired teacher, warm and talkative. Her father Thomas ran a small construction business, renovations, home additions, that sort of thing. He was in his late 50s, fit for his age, with graying hair and an easy confidence. During dinner, something strange happened. When Thomas shook Laura's hand, they both froze for just a second. Then Laura laughed and said, "Thomas, I can't believe it's you." Apparently, they'd known each other in high school, back in the early 80s. They'd run in the same social circles, attended the same parties. Thomas had moved away after graduation, and they'd lost touch. Now 30-some years later, here they were, about to become family through their children. Small world, I said, and everyone laughed. We spent the rest of dinner sharing stories, and Thomas and Laura reminisced about their high school days. The teachers they'd hated, the music they'd loved, the trouble they'd gotten into. It felt natural, nostalgic. I was happy Laura had this unexpected connection to Vivian's family. Over the next few months, there were more meetings. Dress fittings where Elizabeth would come along, and sometimes Thomas too. Rehearsal dinner planning. Cake tastings. The families were merging, spending more time together, and I was usually working, covering stories, meeting deadlines. Laura would fill me in later, excited about the progress. She started going to the gym more regularly. "I want to look good in the photos," she explained. She bought new outfits, changed her skincare routine. I thought she was just being thoughtful, wanting to present well as the mother of the groom. There were small things I didn't think much about. Phone calls she'd take in another room. "Oh, it's just Elizabeth, wedding stuff," she'd say. Extra trips to meet with the wedding planner, sometimes taking half-days off work. Once, I saw her texting someone with a small smile on her face, but when I asked who it was, she said it was just Vivian sharing funny wedding memes. The Thursday before the wedding, I came home early from work. I'd finished my interviews ahead of schedule and decided to surprise Laura, maybe take her out for an early dinner. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was quiet. I called out her name, no answer. I went to the kitchen to grab some water and noticed her phone on the counter. It buzzed with a text notification. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the preview showed on the screen. "Can't wait to see you Saturday. The ceremony will be torture, knowing I can't touch you." No name, just a number. My stomach dropped. I picked up the phone, but it was locked. I set it back down exactly where it was, my hands shaking. Laura came downstairs a few minutes later, freshly showered. "Oh, you're home early," she said, slightly startled. "Yeah, finished up sooner than expected." I watched her face carefully. "Everything okay?" "Of course. Just getting ready. Tomorrow's the rehearsal dinner, remember? We need to be there by 6. I nodded, but something had shifted. That text kept replaying in my mind. Who is it from? Should I confront her? But what if I was wrong? What if it was some kind of joke between friends? The rehearsal dinner was at a nice Italian restaurant downtown. Both families gathered. Our daughter Elizabeth flew in from Charlotte, where she works as a graphic designer, along with our extended family and close friends. Thomas and his wife were there, Jonathan and Vivian were glowing, and everything seemed perfect on the surface. I watched Laura throughout the evening. She was animated, laughing, but I noticed she and Thomas barely spoke directly to each other. They seemed almost careful to avoid interaction, which struck me as odd given how friendly they'd been at previous gatherings. Saturday arrived, the wedding day. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. to avoid the worst of the summer heat. Laura looked beautiful in her navy dress, her hair professionally styled. We drove to the vineyard together, making small talk about how grown-up Jonathan looked, how lovely Vivian's dress would be. The ceremony was perfect. Jonathan teared up when Vivian walked down the aisle. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising partnership, honesty, and unwavering support. I felt Laura's hand in mine and squeezed it, thinking about our own wedding day nearly 3 decades ago. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, I realized I'd left my phone in the car. I excused myself and headed to the parking area, but on my way back, I needed to use the restroom. The main building was crowded, so I remembered there was another bathroom in a smaller building near the event barn. The venue coordinator had mentioned it earlier. I walked around the side of the barn, toward the auxiliary building. The door was slightly ajar, and as I approached, I heard voices. Low, urgent. Thomas, we can't keep doing this. Not today. That was Laura's voice. I know. But God, you look so beautiful. Just one kiss. Please. My hand was on the door. I should have announced myself, turned around, done anything else. But I pushed it open. They sprang apart, but not fast enough. Laura's lipstick was smudged. Thomas's hands had clearly just been on her waist. They both went pale. Paul, Laura started. I held up my hand. My mind was blank, then racing, then blank again. I couldn't speak. I turned and walked out, leaving them there. I made it back to the reception area on autopilot. Jonathan was laughing with his groomsmen, completely oblivious. The implications crashed over me. Our children had just married each other. This wasn't just my wife cheating. This was going to destroy 2 families, not one. On Jonathan's wedding day, I found a quiet corner and tried to breathe. What was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Tell Jonathan right now, on what should be the happiest day of his life. Tell Vivian that her father and new mother-in-law were involved. Laura appeared beside me, her face streaked with tears she'd tried to wipe away. Paul, please. Let me explain. Not here. Not now. Please. How long? I managed to ask. After the wedding. I'll tell you everything. I promise. Just, please don't ruin this day for Jonathan. She was right, and I hated that she was right. I couldn't destroy our son's wedding. So I did what any journalist learns to do. I compartmentalized. I smiled. I gave my speech about Jonathan and Vivian, about love and partnership and building a life together. Every word felt like glass in my mouth. I danced with Laura during the parents' dance. She was crying, and everyone probably thought they were happy tears. I saw Thomas across the room looking sick. Elizabeth seemed concerned about him, asking if he was feeling all right. The reception ended around midnight. We'd booked a hotel room in Richmond, not far from the venue. The drive back was silent. Once we were in the room, Laura finally spoke. It started at the first dinner, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. When I saw him again after all these years. Paul, we dated in high school. For almost 2 years. He was my first, everything. First love, first heartbreak. He left for college and we lost touch, but I never really got over him. I sat in the chair by the window, as far from her as possible. When we reconnected, all those feelings came back. We started texting, just reminiscing at first. Then it became more. We met for coffee a few times. Then, you slept with him. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I love you, Paul. I do. But Thomas, he represented this part of my life I thought was gone forever. It felt like being young again, before responsibilities and routines and me, I finished. Before me. That's not what I meant. How many times? I asked. Does it matter? Yes. She closed her eyes. Maybe a dozen. We'd meet at hotels, or when you were working late. Never at our house. Never anywhere Jonathan or Vivian might see. Very considerate, I said bitterly. I know you hate me right now. I hate myself. I don't know what came over me. It's like I became a different person. Does Elizabeth know? No. And Thomas says he's ending it. He told me today, before the ceremony. He said we got caught up in something that should have stayed in the past, and now that the kids are married, we have to stop. How noble of him, I said. And you agreed? Yes. Of course. Paul, I want to fix this. I want to fix us. I looked at my wife of 29 years. The woman I'd built a life with, raised children with, trusted completely. And I felt nothing but cold rage. I need time, I said. I can't even look at you right now. I grabbed my things and left the hotel room. I drove around Richmond for hours, eventually ending up at my office. I slept on the couch there, if you could call it sleep. Over the next week, I moved through life mechanically. I stayed at a friend Larry's place, telling him Laura and I were having issues but not explaining further. I went to work, wrote my articles, avoided everyone's questions about the wedding. Laura called and texted constantly. I'm so sorry. Please come home. We can go to counseling. It's over with Thomas, I swear. I love you. Jonathan called too, concerned. Dad, Mom says you guys are fighting. What's going on? Just working through some things, son. Nothing for you to worry about. But it was something to worry about. Because Jonathan and Vivian weren't just my son and daughter-in-law anymore. They were the living embodiment of this betrayal. Every time I thought about them, I thought about what Laura and Thomas had done. Behind everyone's backs, sneaking around lying. I started investigating, using the skills I'd developed as a journalist. I pulled phone records. Laura had added her to our family plan years ago, never thinking I'd check. Hundreds of calls and texts to Thomas's number over the past 3 months. I cross-referenced dates. Time she said she was shopping, she was actually at hotels. A girls' lunch with Elizabeth? Actually meeting Thomas at a restaurant in Glen Allen, far enough from Richmond that they wouldn't run into anyone they knew. I documented everything. Screenshots, records, a timeline. Not because I wanted to, but because I'm methodical. It's who I am. 2 weeks after the wedding, I finally went home. Laura was there, looking exhausted. The house was clean, too clean. She'd been stress cleaning, something she did when anxious. Can we talk? She asked. We sat at the kitchen table, where we'd shared thousands of meals. I've been thinking, I said. About what you said. About Thomas being your first love, your first everything. She nodded cautiously. The thing is, Laura, you were my first everything too. First serious girlfriend, first person I lived with, first person I married. And I chose you every single day for 29 years. Even when things were hard, even when we fought, even during the boring parts and the stressful parts and the parts where life felt like just going through motions. I chose you. I know, she whispered. I'm so sorry. But you didn't choose me. When you saw Thomas again, you chose the fantasy of who you used to be instead of the reality of who we are. And that's something I can't forgive. Paul, please. It was a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake. But we can work through this. 29 years, that has to mean something. It meant everything, I said. Past tense. Her face crumbled. What are you saying? I'm saying I want a divorce. The word hung in the air between us. She started crying, then pleading. She'd do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever I wanted. She'd never see Thomas again. She'd quit her job, move away, anything. But I was done. I'd spent 2 weeks thinking about this from every angle, and I kept coming back to the same conclusion. I deserved better. I deserved someone who chose me, not someone who settled for me after her first choice didn't work out. I moved in with Larry temporarily and hired a lawyer. Virginia is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery is one of the grounds that can affect asset division. My lawyer was straightforward. With documentation of the affair, I had a strong case for a favorable settlement. Laura hired her own lawyer, and the process began. We agreed to keep things quiet from Jonathan and Vivian for the moment. They were on their honeymoon in Costa Rica, blissfully unaware that their parents' marriage was imploding. But we couldn't keep it quiet forever. When Jonathan and Vivian returned, we had to tell them. I invited Jonathan to lunch, just the two of us. Your mother and I are getting divorced, I said after we'd ordered. His face went through several emotions: shock, confusion, denial. What? Why? You guys seemed fine at the wedding. A little tense maybe, but... Your mother had an affair, I said quietly. I found out on your wedding day. What? With who? I hesitated, then decided he deserved the truth. With Thomas. Vivian's father. Jonathan's face went white. You're joking. I wish I was. But they barely talked at the wedding. I didn't see. That's because they were hiding it. They'd been involved for about 3 months, since they reconnected. Jonathan put his head in his hands. Oh God. Vivian. Does Vivian know? I don't know if Thomas told Elizabeth or Vivian. That's their family's business. I'm telling you because you're my son, and you deserve to know why your parents are divorcing. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Dad. I had no idea. If I'd known. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. You and Vivian did nothing wrong. But I could see the gears turning in his mind. His wife's father had an affair with his mother. How was he supposed to look at his new father-in-law? How was Vivian supposed to look at her new mother-in-law? The next few weeks were chaos. Jonathan did tell Vivian, who apparently confronted her father. Thomas admitted everything to Elizabeth, who was devastated. She filed for divorce too. 2 marriages imploding because of one affair. Vivian called me crying. Paul, I'm so sorry. I had no idea my father was capable of this. If I'd known. Vivian, honey, this isn't on you any more than it's on Jonathan. Your father and my wife made their choices. You and Jonathan are innocent in all of this. But were they really? Their marriage now carried this weight. Every family gathering would be complicated. Every holiday would require careful navigation. Laura and Thomas had poisoned the well for everyone. The divorce proceedings moved forward. My lawyer was aggressive, pushing for the house, the savings, everything. Laura's lawyer tried to argue for a more equitable split, but the evidence of adultery was damning. In Virginia, the court can consider adultery when dividing assets, especially when it can be proven that the affair involved spending marital assets. All those hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, I had records of everything. Money from our joint account, used to fund an affair. Laura tried to reach out several times. Handwritten letters, emails, showing up at my office. Each time, I refused to engage beyond what was legally necessary. My lawyer handled communication. One letter particularly got to me, though. She wrote, I know I destroyed everything we built. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please understand that what I felt for Thomas wasn't real. It was nostalgia, a midlife crisis, a fantasy. What I feel for you is real. 29 years of real life, real partnership, real love. I threw it away for something that was never going to last. I'm so sorry. I burned the letter. The settlement came through in my favor. I got the house, the majority of our savings, and my retirement account stayed intact. Laura got her car, some furniture, and a small portion of the liquid assets. She'd have to start over, essentially. She moved into a small apartment near her work. I heard through Jonathan that she'd quit Henderson's Hardware. Too many people asking questions about why she and I weren't together anymore. Richmond's not that big. People talk. Thomas and Elizabeth's divorce was messier. They had more assets, a business to divide. But eventually they sorted it out too. Thomas kept his construction company. Elizabeth got their house in the suburbs. The fallout extended beyond just divorces. Jonathan and Vivian's marriage was strained. Through no fault of their own, they were living with the consequences of what their parents had done. Vivian felt guilty by association. Jonathan felt protective of me and angry at Laura. They went to counseling together, working through the complex emotions. I was proud of them for that, for not letting our mistakes destroy their chance at happiness. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Jonathan told me something interesting. Mom called me last week, he said. She's been trying to reach out to Thomas. What? Why? I guess she thought, I don't know, that maybe they could make it work now that you and Elizabeth are out of the picture? But Thomas won't return her calls. He told Vivian that what happened between them was the biggest mistake of his life, and he wants nothing to do with Mom. I felt a grim satisfaction at that. Laura had blown up her marriage for someone who didn't actually want her once the affair became real. The fantasy she'd chased had evaporated the moment it was exposed to daylight. How is she? I asked, surprising myself. Not great, Jonathan admitted. She looks tired. She's working at a different store now, someplace in Henrico County. Living alone. I see her once a month or so. She always asks about you. What do you tell her? That you're doing well. Which you are, right? I considered the question. Was I doing well? I was living alone in the house Laura and I had bought together. I went to work, came home, ate dinner by myself. On weekends, I worked on projects around the house or had lunch with Larry. Sometimes Elizabeth, our daughter, not Thomas's ex-wife, visited from Charlotte. I'm doing okay, I said. Better than I was. And that was true. The initial anger had faded into something quieter. Not forgiveness. I wasn't sure I'd ever forgive Laura. But acceptance, maybe. Acceptance that the marriage I thought I had was gone, and that was okay. I was okay. A year after the divorce, Jonathan and Vivian announced they were expecting a baby. Despite everything, they'd worked through their issues and were building their own life together. I was going to be a grandfather. At the baby shower, both families were there, carefully separated. Laura on one side of the room, me on the other. Thomas and Elizabeth were civil, but distant from each other. We were all there for Jonathan and Vivian, putting aside our complicated history for their sake. I saw Laura across the room at one point. She looked older, which was natural, we were all aging. But there was something else, a sadness that hadn't been there before. She caught me looking and gave a small, hesitant smile. I nodded acknowledgement and turned away. Later, as I was leaving, she approached me in the parking lot. "Paul, wait." I stopped but didn't turn around. "I just wanted to say congratulations on becoming a grandfather. You're going to be wonderful at it." "Thank you," I said stiffly. "And I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know that I understand what I destroyed. Every day I live with that. I lost the best thing in my life for something that was never real." I finally turned to look at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved honesty and loyalty and respect. And I hope someday you find someone who gives you all of that." "I had someone who gave me that," I said. "For almost 30 years, I thought that person was you." She flinched like I'd struck her. "I know. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing, Laura. It doesn't change anything." I got in my car and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see her standing in the parking lot, alone. My grandson was born in early spring. Jonathan and Vivian named him Henry, and he was perfect. Holding him in the hospital, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in over a year. This was a new generation, untainted by the mistakes and betrayals of the past. Life moved on. I eventually started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee and dinners with women I met through work or friends. It felt strange after almost 30 years with the same person, but also freeing. I was rediscovering who I was as an individual, not just as half of a couple. I heard occasional updates about Laura through Jonathan. She was still working retail, still living alone. Thomas had apparently started dating someone new, but it didn't work out. Elizabeth had moved to be closer to Vivian and the baby, finding purpose in being a grandmother. 2 years after the divorce, I sold the house. It was too big for one person, and too full of memories, both good and bad. I bought a smaller place in the museum district, close to work, with a spare room for when Henry visited. The day I moved out, I did one final walkthrough of the empty house. The living room where we'd celebrated Christmases and birthdays. The kitchen where we'd cooked countless meals. The bedroom where we'd slept side by side for nearly 3 decades. I thought about Laura's letter, the one I'd burned. About her claim that what she felt for me was real, and what she felt for Thomas was fantasy. Maybe that was true. Maybe she did love me in her way. But love isn't enough. Love without loyalty, without honesty, without choosing your partner every day. That's not the kind of love that builds a life. That's not the kind of love that lasts. I locked the door for the last time and handed the keys to the realtor. As I drove away, I didn't look back. That chapter of my life was closed. I focused on the present, my work, my kids, my grandson. I took up photography, started hiking on weekends, joined a book club. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, creating something that was mine alone. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if Laura regretted her choices. I knew from Jonathan that she'd tried multiple times to reconcile with Thomas, but he'd completely shut her out. She'd sacrificed everything for someone who didn't want her, and now she had neither her marriage nor her affair. There was a certain justice in that, I supposed. A harsh justice, but justice nonetheless. I never wished harm on Laura. Despite everything, we'd shared nearly 3 decades together, raised 2 wonderful children. But I also never forgave her. Some betrayals are too fundamental, too deep. They crack the foundation of everything you thought you knew. Life had a way of moving forward, even after betrayal. The scars remained, but they healed. I was whole again, in a different way than before. Because I'd learned something through all of this. Betrayal doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. I could have become bitter, angry, closed off. Instead, I chose to heal, to remain open to possibility, to build a new life. Laura made her choices. I made mine. And in the end, I was at peace with that. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.